Good evening. Welcome to the first of a new form of public forum under a new code of meeting practice, and Happy New Year. Council meetings play a key role in Australia's democratic system, providing an open and lawful forum where elected representatives entrusted by the community make decisions that shape the present and the future of the North Sydney local government area. In a country where democratic participation is still both protected and valued, these meetings are a privilege as well as a serious public responsibility. Given the diversity of views within our community, the challenges associated with a changing population and the breadth of Council's responsibilities, it is inevitable that there will be robust debate and at times disagreement, both between councillors as well as between individuals or groups within the community. Under the Local Government Act 1993, councillors are required to be guided by a set of principles when making decisions. These include recognising the diverse needs and interests of the local community, considering social justice principles, taking into account long-term and cumulative impacts of decisions on future generations, considering the principles of ecologically sustainable development, and ensuring that decision-making is transparent and accountable. In August last year, the New South Wales Minister for Local Government announced updates to the Model Code of Meeting Practice, which took effect on the 31st of December 2025. These changes were introduced to improve the effectiveness of council meetings and to address increasing instances of disorderly conduct with the aim of restoring order, transparency and dignity to council proceedings. As part of these changes, public forums are no longer held within council meetings themselves, and instead they take place prior to the commencement of the meeting. Indeed, many councils, including our neighbours at Willoughby, hold the public forum a whole week before the council meeting. Whether or not you agree with the views expressed by staff, councillors or other speakers, all conduct at public forums and council meetings must be respectful. The Code of Meeting Practice applies to councillors, staff and to members of the public alike. The new Code of Meeting Practice mandates that members of the public attending a public forum or a council meeting must remain silent unless invited by the chairperson to speak, not bring flags, signs or protest symbols into the meeting, and not disrupt the proceedings in any way. This meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the public forum, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during the public forum. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the chamber to do so. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, no more than 4 speakers are ordinarily permitted to speak on any one item of business. However, as Mayor and as the Code allows, in consultation with the Chief Executive Officer, I may increase the number where it is considered necessary to allow Council to hear a broader range of views. And of course, on this occasion, and I anticipate on future occasions, I have exercised that discretion, and tonight Council will hear from 24 speakers. The rules governing the public forum were provided to you in your registration application and have been printed and placed on the registered speakers' chairs. As each speaker approaches the lectern, which you'll see before you, I will ask you to confirm that you understand and accept these rules. In summary, the key rules are as follows. Each speaker is allocated 3 minutes to address Council. This time limit will be strictly enforced. Speakers must confine their remarks to the specific agenda item that they have applied to address. Councillors, including the chairperson, may ask questions of a speaker following their address. Any such questions must be direct, succinct and without argument. Speakers are under no obligation to answer any questions put to them. Speakers may not ask questions of council, councillors or staff during the public forum. All speakers must comply with the Code of Meeting Practice and all other relevant council codes, policies and procedures. Speakers must refrain from disorderly conduct, including publicly alleging breaches of the Code of Conduct or making statements that may be defamatory. As Chair, if I consider that a speaker has engaged in disorderly conduct, I will ask them to refrain from the behaviour and to withdraw and unreservedly apologise for any inappropriate comments. If the speaker fails to comply, further action may be taken in accordance with the Code. And this, under the Minister's new Code of Meeting Practice, includes penalties under the Local Government Act, which is a first in many a decade. I thank all of the registered speakers and attendees for your cooperation and ask that we together conduct this public forum in a respectful and orderly manner.
Recording in progress.
And so with that, I formally open the public forum. And I will acknowledge that we're meeting tonight on Camaragal land, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to any First Nations people here this evening. So that brings us to the first registered speaker, Mr. Stephen Grenville. If you would please come to the lectern, and I will ask that you confirm, you give your name and where you're from, and that you confirm that you understand and accept the rules of the public forum.
I'm Stephen Grenville from Kirribilli. I understand and accept the rules. I'm strongly in favour of a substantial increase in the council rates, but the draft proposal perpetuates an inequity in the rate structure, which should be corrected as a first priority. The minimum rate, around $750, has gone up with the modest standard increases set by IPART. The rates paid by the non-minimum rate payers have consistently risen faster. Plus, we now have an inequity between the two groups. A modest terrace is paying twice as much as a multi-million-dollar apartment, and over 3/4 of the rate payers are on the minimum rate. North Sydney's minimum rate might be the third lowest in Metro Sydney, but the rate for the rest of us is high compared with our peers. This disparity is disguised in the draft of the council comparing minimum rates, $750, with the combined average of both the minimum rates and the non-minimum rates taken together, $750 against around $1,000. Makes the disparity look trivial. But we need to compare the minimum rate with the average of the non-minimum rate payers. My back of the envelope calculation suggests this is around $2,000. The proposal has a minimum rate rising only marginally faster than the rate for the residual shareholder rate payers. Option 3, for instance, 64% as against 54%. The disparity remains largely unaddressed. As a starting point for an alternative SRV proposal, we might apply option 3 increase, but just to the minimum rate. The new minimum rate at around $1,200 would still be less than the rate of a modest terrace subject to just a standard IPART increase of around 10%. My rough calculations suggest that this would increase the residential rate income, currently around $35 million, by around $15 million. This would be a substantial increase, correct the current inequity, and be a better base for future increases. How would IPART react to such a proposal? In considering last year's SRV bid, IPART made the same mistake that the council made by comparing the minimum rate with the overall average rather than the average of the non-minimum rate payers. When I pointed this out to them, they acknowledged their error and quietly corrected the figure in their already published report without altering the decision. Some diplomatic drafting of the proposal would subtly remind IPART of its error. This might strengthen the case for focusing the current SRV bid on a substantial increase in the minimum rate. I offer my help in that drafting. Thank you for the opportunity to make this argument.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grenville. If you just wait, are there any questions of the speaker? And thank you for your participation. The next registered speaker is Elizabeth Sheedy. You please come forward, say where you're from, and that you accept the rules of the public forum.
Hi everyone, I'm Professor Elizabeth Sheedy. I'm from Ridge Street, North Sydney. I understand the rules and I will follow them. So we are talking about three alternatives for rates. Tonight, I'm speaking in defence of option 3 over option 2 and certainly over option 1. Not only do I want to see existing infrastructure maintained, but I want to see new infrastructure, especially infrastructure that supports sustainability in the midst of a climate crisis. Let's reflect on the recent federal elections and the outcomes in this area. I'm speaking for and to the North Sydney residents that have repeatedly elected an independent federal MP that is passionate about climate issues. How hypocritical would we be if we were prepared to support action on climate change in the ballot box, but not prepared to spend a couple of dollars a week to support it? If not in this relatively wealthy area, then where? We need to put our money where our collective voice is. The difference between options 2 and 3 is only 62 cents a week next year, rising to $2.85 in 2028-29. What do we get for that? We get more money to increase renewable energy capacity on council infrastructure. We get expanded stormwater harvesting and water reuse. We get the possibility to explore the feasibility of community batteries on council land and more money for cycleways. Not only is this expenditure consistent with our stated values, but it will almost certainly pay for itself in lower energy and water costs in future and in a more healthy and sustainable future for this district and beyond. North Sydney, it's time to put the saga of the pool behind us. We need to learn the lessons and put the mistakes of the past in the past where they belong. Let's look to the future and create a sustainable future that we can be proud to pass on to the next generation. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? No, thank you very much for your participation. The next registered speaker is Julie Townsend. If you would come forward and give your name, where you're from, and whether you accept and acknowledge the public forum rules.
Julie Townsend, I'm from Waverton and I understand the rules. Well, here we are again. After IPARC comprehensively rejected your 87% rate increase application last year, you're back with a 53% rate rise plan. And you've allocated $250,000 of ratepayers' money to planning it. I hope tonight that you all decide not to lodge a special rate variation, because I believe you should be able to provide our services responsibly and efficiently with the 10.33% 3-year rate increase that IPARC has determined is perfectly reasonable. I object to your latest special rate variation for 3 main reasons. Number 1, you profess concern for financial sustainability, but spend up big on yourselves. In your June meeting, 6 of you voted to pay yourselves the maximum allowable remuneration for the year. The councillors voting to get the maximum pay were Mayor Baker and councillors Antonini, Barigi, Holding, Santa and Welsh. By contrast, councillors Spenceley, Keane and Carr argued that you should lead by example and pay yourselves a smaller remuneration. You voted them down. And in your latest annual report, you revealed that your overall council expenses rose 18.5% in 1 year, with other expenses tripling and conferences and seminars going up 5-fold. These included Councillor Barigi's attendance at Smart Synthetic Sports Surfaces seminar, which she also logged in 22-23, and Councillor Santa's attendance at the Destination and Visitor Economy Conference 2025 on the Tweed Coast, which he also attended in 2024. It seems there's enough in the budget for your needs. Number 2, against this backdrop of maximum pay rises and colossal expense increases, you have the temerity to look at us and say, they have the money, let them pay. On page 19 of your proposed special variation report, you comment that North Sydney ratepayers have, quote, high incomes, low debt stress and strong payment history. So, quote, have the capacity to pay the proposed rate increases. What a mindset. You want it, we've got it, you take it. Number 3, there are still significant cost of living pressures that place an enormous strain on many households. CPI rose 3.4% over the past year, Housing rose 5.2, food 3.3, transport 2.7. People have plenty of financial worries. Please don't now attempt to load us up with a 53% rate rise. In summary, I urge you not to pursue another special rate variation, but pursue fiscal responsibility. You oversee a huge property portfolio, unlock some value from it, find alternative funding sources, identify containment strategies and savings targets. You found the money to budget yourselves. Now please find the money in the budget to look after our neighbourhood. Cut your coat to fit your cloth, like the rest of us have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation. Next registered speaker is Jen Patel. If you would please come forward, give your name, where you're from, and that you understand and accept the rules of the public forum.
I understand and accept the rules of this engagement here today. I am not a regular public speaker. I request you to consider the social justice truly in favour of sustainability for ratepayers and residents here. I am the common person who lives in this area, who's lived in this area for over 30 years. I'm on a very low income, nowhere near the wage that you're all on. The forecasted CPI is only about 3.4%, and everything else will rise at that rate. I cannot afford this burden of an extreme 53% or anything near that at all. I'm just going to say a few more things. How do you expect us to meet the sudden exorbitant rate rise? The inefficient use of ratepayers' money is clearly proof of councillors and its council of incompetency. You would not operate a home without planning expenses and funding. Such a hike would burden almost everyone. Most of us have planned income and that is barely able to meet expenses. And I totally agree with what my previous speaker said. I do not want to repeat it, but all that I agree with because I've also written all that. So please think of us. We're ratepayers. We live in this area. We support this area. We do a fair bit in the community. And I have no income like that to be able to afford such a rise in rates. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? Brings us to the next speaker, Mr. John Lorimer. If you could come forward and again give your name, where you're from, that you have read and accept the rules of the public forum.
Thank you, John Lorimer, Neutral Bay. I accept and understand and accept the rules. So, Madam Mayor and councillors, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to talk to the proposed SRV. I will open by saying I am fully supportive of the raising of the minimum business and residential rates to try and correct the current inequities. Thereafter, I'm afraid my support diverges. Last year's submission was rejected on 4 criteria, and this year's has the potential to yield the same outcome. Let me make some suggestions as to how you might alter that and get an acceptable increase through. Firstly, your paper has not demonstrated sufficient financial need to warrant the size of the increases in options 2 and 3, because you have not properly considered alternative sources of funding and you've not factored those into the LTFP. Revenue is rate rises and fees and charges is definitely within your remit, and you can increase that in an assured amount. But you have avoided funding or another funding alternative out of cost reductions. They are hard numbers. They're in council's remit and control, and they are employee costs and materials and services. They are 75% of your total costs, and you have discretion over most of those. Productivity improvements have been made, and they're commendable, but ambitious cost reductions are missing. 23 million over 10 years reduced expenditure is not ambitious. It's less than 2% of your operating budget. If you aim for 10 million a year, and you did 5 last year, so it's very doable, you'd be around 150 million in future value. That would go a long way to dealing with your infrastructure backlog. How might you achieve this cost saving? Stop doing everything. Release the FTE that are currently supporting what I call soft items in your overhead. Economic development, social inclusion and cohesion, partnerships, webinars, grants, culture and creative hubs. Outsource them, slow them down. Council operates 74 services. In last year's plan, it had 192 projects. It's just way, way too much for a council. Corporate services alone in the fourth quarter operating performance review did 28 services. You just don't need to do that. Whereas you do need to invest in open space and infrastructure. That's how you could fund it. Also, you could sell assets. The Mayor's message last year said we need to seriously consider our 58 million of assets. And yet here we are submitting a proposal without any allowance made for those at all. You've had 9 months to agree terms for disposal of two roads and a car park. I would have thought you could at least, at least,
given the number of speakers.
you could at least include that. So in summary, the last 2 points, your community engagement survey is flawed. It did not use trade-off analysis. And you certainly didn't test the willingness of people to pay the increase. You are elected to act in the best interests of the LGA. Please do not vote along factional lines. The electorate will remember it and notice it. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation. The next registered speaker. Kari, if you come forward, please.
Mr. Curry is not here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, the next registered speaker is Helen Sherwatt. If you would come forward, please, and give your name, where you're from, and that you understand and accept the rules of the public forum.
My name is Helen Chiowewat. I am from Waverton, and yes, I understand and accept the rules. I have entitled my small speech, Rate Rises, 2 Options, 2 Outcomes, and I'm looking at this from my perspective as a retiree. I believe that a modest rate rise, the lowest option, will be the most easily absorbed by both individual and business. And the highest, the 50% one, will cause the most economic decline in the North Sydney area. Small businesses in North Sydney are under stress. You just have to walk through Greenwood Shopping Complex, and this is very clear. There are fewer food outlets, fewer shops overall, less commercial activity. North Sydney is in decline as a commercial centre. If you look back to pre-COVID times, it was flourishing. Now, thanks to people working from home and spending less on food, fashion and consumer goods during their lunch hours, it is much quieter. Basically, it's only busy in lunchtime, and for the rest of the day, it's very quiet. High rates mean higher rents, higher costs for businesses, which they cannot sustain because businesses are under pressure. Other negative factors for North Sydney's economy are the metro, which takes people very quickly from the city to Chatswood, where they spend their money. They're not spending it in North Sydney. And that metro is here to stay. And rents and house prices are so high in the North Sydney area that they are keeping away middle-income people. So higher prices in North Sydney are driving businesses into non-sustainability, and they're driving people, that is ratepayers, out of the area. It's also a high rate rise, the highest rate rise is very difficult for people like me. I'm a part pensioner, a ratepayer. I have a fixed income, and in these economic times, people in my situation have to eat less well, reduce their healthcare costs, not go out for a coffee or a bite to eat as much as they otherwise would, and this is meaning poorer health for many people in our society, and it's meaning that small businesses are under yet more pressure. I'm asking the council please to take these social factors into consideration when they consider rate rises, because there are human consequences for people's health and well-being, and there are consequences for the small business community. Please consider this and take the lowest rate rise option and not the highest. Thank you.
The next registered speaker is Gary Malloy. If you would please come forward, give your name, where you're from, and that you have read and accept the rules of the public forum.
Good evening. My name is Gary Malloy. I'm a resident in North Sydney, and I have heard and understood and will comply with the requirements. Firstly, I'd actually like to thank the Mayor, the councillors and council officers that are here tonight, in that you perform very difficult functions, often without thanks, and really it's almost an impossible quandary in terms of what you are sometimes asked to do. A difficult, thankless task. Hopefully tonight you'll actually have the opportunity to demonstrate your ongoing commitment to the community and what actually brought to the table tonight. The reason I've actually asked to speak is that despite having spent days trying to dissect the 770-page report, I actually don't believe I'm in a position to give informed comment. When I say that, I've definitely tried to evaluate the three options. I've actually got a financial modelling background. I'm a member of an engineering professional society, and I've also completed the company directors course. So I'm sort of au fait with this sort of thing. And I've worked in corporate environments where I've been looking at stuff like this and actually was a decision maker. But I couldn't actually form an opinion looking at what was put before me. And the reason for that was none of the underlying data behind the modelling was made available to us. One of the things I actually went and looked for was what people have actually talked tonight in terms of what are the actual operating costs of council. More particularly, what has council done to save costs? What has council done to look at outsourcing opportunities? What has council done so that they actually can get on top of their budget and position themselves to form a view as to how they might move forward? I actually went and downloaded every annual report issued by council, and from 24-25, I went back, got the last 5 annual reports, fed it into AI, but also spent the time dissecting it. I couldn't actually see evidence of any genuine hard decisions taken by this council in terms of their fiscal management. It's not there. So what's council doing? The speakers here have all talked about services in this council. Well, what services can be cut? Why is it that you put yourself in a position where the budget is the way it is? It's because you haven't been managing your budget in the past. And there is no evidence in anything I've read so far where I believe the hard work has been done. And so what I do is I'm actually suggesting at this point in time that we have no option but to in fact go for option 1, the lowest increase, because I don't believe the work is there for you to actually justify being handed any additional funds. Now, please, and I put out the challenge, prove me wrong. Show me where the justifications are in place. Show me where the work has been done, and I will then support your motions. Thank you.
Are there any? You can open. You come forward, give your name, where you're from, and that you've read and accept the rules of the public forum.
My name is Peter Noble from Milsons Point, and I think I understand the rules and I accept them. With such a large increase in rates proposed, an important consideration, but not the only consideration, is whether people who are going to pay that increase can, in effect, afford to pay it. The paper is largely unchanged from the earlier application and is based on 2021 numbers. I think it's fair to say that to ignore the financial turmoil post-2021 is quite an omission. However, other speakers have and will deal with major shortcomings in new application. I will now focus on the defects in the capacity to pay assumptions. So the document before us says we all have the capacity to pay increased rates. If you can't, the hardship provisions will help. The hardship provisions, however, only apply to those who pay rates directly. The ABS tells us that 52% of residents in North Sydney LGA are renters, which mean they will pay for the rate increase through a rent increase for which they cannot claim any form of concession or exemption. Should also note that most businesses rent their premises and are feeling the effects of the cost of living crisis, so the rate increase will probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back, a la the lounge in Milson's Point. The Bureau of Statistics also tells us that 10% of the Sydney LGA have incomes of less than $650 per week, and also tells us on top of the 52% who rent, another 20% are still paying off their mortgages. Indeed, outright ownership of premises in North Sydney is 25%, 6% below the national average. This does not show financial strength. The statistics also explain the so-called disadvantaged council experiences with apparently lower rates for the average in Sydney. This is not supported by any analysis of the statistics. So to blithely say, as this council does, that North Sydney fits a top 1 to 2% socioeconomic profile, so to increase the rates by 60%, ignores some realities. North Sydney Council nominal household rates may appear low, but per person they are already the second highest in the metropolitan Sydney on a per person or per capita basis. And there are many stories, especially single women renters with children whose circumstances and financial otherwise are very difficult, especially as this cost of living crisis. But it is council offering those people 50% of greater amenity or utility in return for the increase of this will represent to her rent? No, it's not. And she is one of many who fall in that wide crack between statistical definitions of capacity to pay and a willingness to pay, which this council is cold-heartedly ignoring in its desire to make residents pay for its own mistakes. The LGA is not uniformly wealthy, as the SRV submission will claim. Thank you.
Next registered speaker is Chris Bowdler. If you could please come and do the same, give your name, where you're from, and that you've read and understood the rules of the public forum, and we'll accept them.
Hello, I'm Chris Bowdler from McMahon's Point, and I've read and I'll do my best to comply with your rules. Let me just put on my glasses. We are being made to pay 50% more to make up for your mistakes. We have a right to be sceptical and to be angry.
I'm going to call the gallery to order. I have explained to you that you're to be silent while others are speaking. And so if you would allow Mr. Bowdler to continue with the respect of silence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have I got my time adjusted or? Okay. What we have is a new SRV application that is a trimmed down version of the earlier failed one, taking us for fools. The duplication is wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars. Was this considered when Councillor Welsh was assessing the CEO's annual performance bonus? An insult is that council has failed.
That's just not true. Councillor Welsh doesn't have the role of dealing with the CEO's performance.
Oh, well,
I ask you to withdraw and apologise.
Well, I'll withdraw and it's not true. Could you provide me with the correct process? That would be good.
Again, under this code, you're not to ask questions of anyone, but it's not our code. It's the Office of Local Government and the Ministers. So
councillors do assess.
But you are wasting your time to address the.
Well, I'm sorry, you're wasting it too. An insult is that councillors failed to meet its engagement plan with the community to meet in December last month, forcing this meeting into the peak holiday season and avoiding an embarrassing meeting like last year. There was hope when council displayed some financial discipline in 24-25 and 24-25 and 25-26 when it was forced on them by IPART's refusal. but it was only limited. This financial year, they reduced their financial repair target and increased the deficit by $3 million. In doing so, council has thwarted legislative requirements to be financially sustainable and economical. Further, no substantial cost savings have been made in recent years. Following the PwC review of the pool overrun, the Mayor wrote in April 23, I can assure you that council's finances are sound and that the additional cost of about $30 million can be managed without reducing service levels. Since then, construction costs have increased by $27 million or 28%, and the time completion increased by 22 months. Further increases in the two-year-old budget are predicted. This makes it understandable why council wants to take the limelight off the pool in this second SRV application. Now the pool has a top billing as one of the world's most expensive pool rebuilds. This will look good on both the CEO and the councillors' CVs. Council accepts that little has been done.
Got 3 minutes.
Well, you've done little with,
Thank you, Mr.
you've said you've done nothing with infrastructure and...
Thank you. Questions, Speaker?
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. Thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Again, if you give your name, where you're from, that you read and under Jones Street.
Jones Street, Lavender Bay. Yes, I have read and understand and accept the participation rules. Madam Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I have many concerns, but with just 3 minutes, I will focus on the surveys. Firstly, the methodology used in the surveys, used in both surveys, used a unipolar satisfaction scale, i.e., it went from very satisfied to not at all satisfied. This measures sentiment in one direction only. It lacks a neutral option, biases results upward, and is inappropriate for major financial or policy decisions. A bipolar scale, for example, one that runs from strongly opposed to strongly support, would have been more credible. Second, the first survey, meant to identify valued services, risks turning uninformed preferences into higher rates. Residents were asked if services should be reduced, maintained, or increased without knowing the cost, efficiency, or financial impact of the 10-year strategic plan. How can council rely on a survey that invites demand for more services while withholding the cost? Third, the second survey presented 3 rate options. Rate peg only, 40% cumulative increase, 54% cumulative increase. The highest increase, option 3, was the least favoured. Just 22% of residents and 14% of businesses supported it. Yet, this is the option being recommended tonight, suggesting the consultation was more for show than for real participation. This erodes trust and risks council's reputation. Fourth, inconsistent reporting. The first surveys and the second interview survey were each documented in 30+ pages in the paper before you this evening. But yet, the second community opt-in survey, which had 700+ participants and 61% supporting a rate peg option only, was reduced to just 2 pages. Why? In addition, there is a troubling inconsistency with the treatment of precinct data. Woolston Croft's 33 votes on the 10th of December were fully disaggregated. Option 2, 10 votes. Option 3, 21 votes. Abstentions, 2 votes. Yet, Lavender Bay's 39 votes on the 30th of October were dismissed as not applicable, despite the minutes clearly recording no support for any rate rise above the rate peg. May I conclude, Madam Mayor, please? All right. In conclusion, it all comes down to process, evidence, and trust. When the process is weak, the evidence selective, and the community excluded, trust collapses. Councillors, how can you make a decision of this magnitude without rigour, without transparency, without knowing how it was reached? You cannot, and the community knows it. Thank you.
Is Robert Lynch. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. If you could give your name, where you're from, that you've read and will accept them, please.
Robert Lynch, Milson's Point. Yes, I've read and understood the rules for tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to address the forum tonight. I'm having considerable difficulty reconciling statements made in Council's proposed special rate variation document with Council's audited financial statements. For example, on page 4, under background, Council refers to ongoing operating deficits. However, when I reviewed 7 years of audited financial statements from 2019 through 2025, Council recorded an average net operating profit of 16.3 million per year. In 2025, the net operating profit was 15.2 million. Importantly, that profit was achieved after booking a non-cash depreciation expense of 29 million. If depreciation expense is excluded, which is normal accounting practice in assessing operating profit, the underlying operating profit in 2025 is 45 million, or an operating margin of almost 30%. This does not indicate an organisation with operating deficits. Another example appears on the same page of the document, where Council claims it has low financial resilience due to low unrestricted cash. Yet the audited financial statements show that term deposits increased from 69 million in 2024 to 100 million in 2025, a 45% increase in 1 year. Council's term deposits averaged 89 million over the 7 years, and again at 100 million in 2025, that is 12% higher than the 7-year average. Likewise, cash on hand in the 25 financial statements was 29.9 million. This compares favourably at 16% higher than the 7-year average for cash. The claims of operating deficits and low financial resilience are simply not supported by the facts. Turning briefly to asset sales, the draft long-term financial plan on page 50 states that asset sales are neither sustainable nor prudent. Yet it goes on to say that a property strategy will be developed to assess the financial needs. My question, how can that conclusion be reached before the property strategy even exists? Finally, the Ward Street car park is identified on page 49 of that document for property planning, whilst the same document acknowledges that car parking revenue is falling due to the metro. So Council has a valuable asset with declining income. No apparent plan to address it, yet the response is a substantial increase in rates. This disconnect is at the heart of the community's concern and the loss of trust in this Council. Thank you.
Next registered speaker is Ian Mutton. If you could please come forward, Mr. Mutton. Again, give your name, where you're from, and that you understand the public forum rules and will accept them.
My name's Ian Mutton. I live in Dind Street, Milson's Point, and I'm probably familiar to some of you. This council has a very proud history of being concerned with the underdog. Whether it was Ted Mack that started that tradition or whether it was he that championed it, it's important to appreciate his awareness of the underdog. That is why we have a rating system that provides a minimum rate. And that is why we have a rating structure that sees the business rate used to subsidise the residential rate. I'm not here to criticise that. I think recognition of the underdog is an incredibly important attribute of our council. And you heard a speaker earlier talk about 10% of the families, 10% of the households in North Sydney have an income of less than $650 per week. That's incredibly low. That means 10% of the people strain to meet their budget. We have 57% of the residents of North Sydney are tenants. If we increase the rate, the landlord's largesse won't be to protect the tenant. The landlords will pass the increased rate straight on to the tenant. And the problem is so many of the people who rent premises, so many of the people who are low income brackets are struggling to meet the rates. So it's all very well to talk about North Sydney as being wealthy. And sure, it has significant areas of wealth, but it also has significant areas of poverty. So at the last election, I was somewhat pleased to see two groups of councillors run on a platform. One, I will advocate for policies that ease the financial pressures on our community. Another, ensure that council services remain accessible to all. I think they are incredibly important criteria. Then, when I read the SRV, it caused me to pause, caused me to wonder about the finances. And then I came to something, the delivery program, and I want to read from it. As part of the review of operational properties, Council will consider strategic divestment opportunities. The objective is to generate capital to offset rising costs of the North Sydney Olympic Pool project and address the growing backlog.
And that's your 3 minutes, if you could close very briefly.
Madam Mayor, may I extension a quick question?
Extensions, you've heard and understood the rules that are in place for public order, and they come from the Minister, who's very keen that every council in state of Parliament will have more speakers after you, and we have to commence the meeting, the formal meeting of council in 13 minutes time.
The sadness is the ratepayers are going to fall the full brunt of the costs, and the rates need not rise if properties are realised. Thank you.
The registered speaker is Danielle Vieira. If you could please come forward, give your name, where you're from, and everyone standards rules of the forum.
Hi, my name is Danielle Vieira. I'm from North Sydney and I understand acceptable rules. I want to speak in favour of the proposed SRV. To my mind, this is an issue where North Sydney Council either has ongoing financial resources to provide the services that residents need and expect, or the council doesn't have the ongoing financial resources required and has to cut services and sell assets until there are no more services to cut and no more commercially viable assets to sell. That second option will still likely lead to a future council having to discuss a proposed SRV because you just simply cannot cut your way out of constrained budget. And there are plenty of examples in the public sector that prove that point. As we've seen time and time again, when services are cut and when assets are sold from the public sector to the private sector, they're gone for good. They won't come back. It's just too expensive to bring those back. And North Sydney Council residents have made it clear they want to see services maintained, if not improved. So look, this is not a great situation that we're in. No one wants to be here. But realistically, we're going to have a hard discussion about how do we have the finances to continue to provide the services and facilities that we require and expect. And at the moment, we are seeing where decisions are being made because of that constrained budget. For example, the infrastructure maintenance backlog. Some of those things, might not seem so obvious and a bit out of sight and out of mind. So the example in the report about the stormwater network, Other repairs are a bit more obvious and are causing negative impacts and possible harm to residents. I live next door to council-owned community housing. It is due to its age, it is in a state of disrepair and it's urgent. The guttering has failed. Every time it rains, and particularly most recently, there is a torrent of water that is just deposited at the only entry and exit to that apartment. So I don't think it's acceptable that my neighbours, just because they're in public housing, should have to make a decision as to whether they can safely leave their home when it rains. And that's what prompted me to speak today. I wasn't going to, but every time I look at the state of disrepair, I just feel upset. They deserve better. And as a community, we can do better for them and for everyone in the community, and to provide safe buildings so that there is no further harm and that we are not causing further expenses as we let assets degrade. And maintenance and infrastructure is an ongoing cost. It's increasing, and we are seeing increasing costs across the country to construction and to materials. And one-off boosts to the bottom line, like selling assets, cutting services, are not sustainable. You might get that immediate hit when you sell that asset or you cut that service, but it's not ongoing. You need to have ongoing funding. And just to end on a glib point, I don't think it's passes the pub test that my rates for a house in North Sydney are lower than my friends in an apartment in Canterbury, Bankstown. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Thank you very much for your participation. The next registered speaker is Robert Stitt, KC. If you could please come forward, give your name, where you are from, and that you understand the rules of the public forum and accept them all.
My name is Robert Stitt. I live at McMahon's Point. I understand and accept the protocols and the rules which govern this meeting. Madam Mayor and councillors, I thank you for this opportunity to address you. I speak on behalf of the Lavender Bay Precinct, which is a robust precinct with large membership of active citizens. The members have requested me to bring these matters to council's notice tonight. There has developed in our precinct a belief that council has lost its credibility with the broader rate-paying community and has a serious trust deficit. I mention just two issues which constantly recur. There's a strong belief in the community that the council does not listen to the views of the people. In other words, it ignores its electorate. Firstly, rates. Last year, council approved an 87% rate increase with no proper basis for its justification. The community strongly opposed that increase. IPART completely rejected the council's application. The precinct said to the council it should sell the naming rights to the Olympic pool and North Sydney Oval for millions of dollars and sell assets. Instead, the council is now proposing another 52 to 62% special rate increase, even though only 22% of the ratepayers support it. The council has given conflicting reasons for this. It claims the SRV is not related to the cost of the pool. That claim is not credible. It said in the present paper that the pool has nothing to do with the rate increase, as the pool is funded from revenue. Rather, the SRV application is about routine asset renewal. In an ABC interview on the 14th of January, the Mayor said the pool is draining reserves and spoke about its opportunity costs, whatever that means. The council's financial records show a worsening cash, debt and operating ratio over the past 4 years. The community will draw its own conclusion. Secondly, the pool and its costs. Even though the pool is not finished and its final cost is not determined, it has already reached international notoriety as the third most expensive pool at $122 million, behind Crystal Pool, Vancouver, Canada, in the world. Given time with lawsuits and late-stage variations, however, costs could soar past $146 million and we may yet achieve first place as the most expensive municipal pool in the world. The community is tired of the council's recurring theme that it inherited the problems in 2021 from previous councils. The PwC report in December 2022 makes clear that the entire responsibility for the expanding costs rests with this council and its previous entities.
That's your 3 minutes. If you could close briefly.
Our community deserves a council which has credibility and which it can trust. It's time for the council to accept responsibility for the cost overrun and not continue to blame previous councils.
Thank you. The next registered speaker is Jason Dong. If you could please come forward. And while you're doing that, I'll explain that under the Local Government Act, we're required to formally open the advertised council meeting at 7 p.m. And so what I will do is Mr. Dong will be the last speaker for the meantime. We will then adjourn the public forum. We will then formally open the council meeting so that we've complied with our requirements under the Local Government Act. We will adjourn the formal meeting of council and we will resume so that every last speaker can be heard. Thank you, Mr. Dong. If you could give your name, where you're from, and that you understand and will abide by the rules of this public forum.
My name's Jason Dong. I am from North Sydney, both the suburb and the LGA, and I understand and will comply. I live in a 30 square metre shoebox studio. My apartment has practically no insulation, but it's all I can afford, and I'm willing to make that trade-off to live in probably the best LGA in the state. My neighbours and I all pay the minimum residential rate, and it's about that I want to speak. In aggregate, there's 80 of us, doctors, nurses, bus drivers, retirees. We pay 80 minimum residential rates. That's $59,500 roughly. If a rapacious developer were to come along and demolish our apartment block and build a multi-million-dollar single-family dwelling, how much would they pay? They would pay $14,608, 4 times less. I think it is very hard to say that myself and my neighbours do not pay our fair share of council rates. If the council needs to increase rates for financial repair, and I'm grateful for the work that the council and its staff has done to establish whether or not that's the case, my single request is that you do so equitably. The current proposals before the council do not share that burden equitably. If you have the meeting materials in front of you, on page 11, option 2 says that there's going to be a cumulative 39.92% increase in ad valorem rates. That maths is conveniently done, but the maths that's not the maths that hasn't been done, and which I had to get my scientific calculator out to do, is that the minimum residential rate is going to go up by a cumulative 57.18%. Now, I'm not very good at maths, but I know that 57.18% is higher than 39.92%. And it's much the same story with option 3. The ad valorem rate's going to go up by 52.6%, and the minimum rate's going to go up by 62%. That's a reallocation of the burden of council rates. That's asking the least wealthy residents of this council to carry the can instead of the owners of larger properties of land. Even if they're not multi-million-dollar harbourside estates, they are definitely, at a minimum, significant appreciating assets. For that reason, this proposal should be rejected. You will, of course, have seen the argument that's been made before that ultra-premium luxury apartments also happen to pay the minimum residential rate because council rates happen to be assessed on unimproved value. That is no reason to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. When you crack the nut of ultra-premium luxury apartments, you also crack the nut of nurses, teachers and bus drivers, that is the most financially vulnerable residents of our LGA. You risk exposing them to mortgage stress and rental stress. It makes North Sydney a more difficult, a more expensive place to live for the financially most vulnerable residents of our community. So for the sake of a diverse, vibrant and inclusive North Sydney, I urge you to reject these proposals in favour of something more equitable. Thank you.
It being 6:59, I won't call on the next speaker in the public forum. We will wait until we hit 7 p.m. In a matter of seconds. And so I'm going to move that I'm going to formally adjourn the public forum pending the opening and adjournment of the formal council meeting. Right. Okay. We're still recording. Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this formal meeting of council. I welcome those who are attending in the public gallery and those coming in online. And I'll call on Councillor Berrigy to give the acknowledgement of country. Thank you, Mayor.
On behalf of all present and those watching our webcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands in which we meet and pay our respects to ancestors and spirits past and present.
Thank you. Councillors, we've had a request from Councillor Spenceley to attend tonight's meeting remotely due to unforeseen caring responsibilities. Is there a mover for that request? Moved by Councillor Santa, seconded by Councillor Berrigy. All those in favour? And that is carried. Welcome, Councillor Spenceley. Are there any disclosures of interest for the item on the agenda of this extraordinary meeting? No. The conduct of this meeting, the meeting is being recorded and made publicly available on Council's website. Those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. By attending the meeting, you are giving consent to your image and voice being webcast. Again, a reminder to councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during meetings of the council. Councillors who need to use their phone to text, talk or engage in social media activity must leave the council chamber if they wish to do so. There is one item on the agenda. We're not considering minutes from the previous meeting. I therefore move to adjourn this meeting pending finalising the public forum. I'll move that from the chair. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Welsh. All those in favour? And that is carried. This meeting of council is adjourned. That now brings us back to the public forum, which we will formally resume. And the next registered speaker, if you would please come forward, is Michael Parker. And again, if you'll give your name, where you're from, and that you've read and understood, and will abide by the rules of the public forum.
I have read and understood the rules. Mayor, councillors, Michael Parker, North Sydney ratepayer. Last year, many residents objected here to the proposed rate rise, but you took no notice. Last year, I implored you not to submit the rate rise to IPART, but you ignored me. You took no notice. 6 months ago, I submitted a detailed document to manage your costs, but you took no notice. There's one statement that reflects this council, and that is arrogant. I have no doubt that you will ignore all the objections to the current proposal. To get anything approved by IPART, you need two things: proper justification and public support. This 700-page document proves you have neither. As always, I don't come here just to complain, but to provide solutions. Defer your submission and run a workshop open to all residents and ratepayers with all the costs and all the options on the table. Of course, you're going to ignore my proposal, waste more time and money. How much did the last year's proposal cost? How much for all these consultants and internal costs? 53% rate rise is still ridiculous. If 87% was needed last year, why have you reduced it to 53? Are you just playing with IPART to see what you can get? As far as I'm concerned, you can manage quite well with no rate rise at all, and that's what I'll be saying to IPART. Thank you very much.
Next registered speaker is Davey McDonald. If you would please come forward, give your name, where you're from, and that you have read and understood and will abide by the rules of the public forum.
Hi, my name's Davey McDonald. I come from Crow's Nest. I also come from Scotland, but we'll leave that aside. The reason I'm here tonight to oppose the special rate variation, but I'm disturbed also because on the ABC radio Sydney the other week, I heard a member of the council saying there'd been extensive consultation. I question that because I'm not aware that there's been extensive consultation whatsoever. And a key part of that discussion on the radio was that the pool was at a level of $122 million. That was a figure we were given last January. And I've been in this chamber before the last meeting where it's clearly blown out. If it's 122 million in January of last year, and the builder Icon is into us for a claim of 28 million, and then also the architects, it clearly has to have blown out. And why am I talking about the pool in relation to this? Because it should form part of the submission to IPART, because none of us here know because of so many meetings held behind closed doors. And that's something that Ron Hernig, the minister, wanted to see finished with closed meetings, that the decisions be open. That's another reason why I oppose the IPART claim. We've heard tonight, I think I represent or come from one of those people who are 40% of people that are considered to be financially in the vulnerable part of our society. And this is another reason why I oppose this IPART variation. The other thing you've heard is that landlords, 52%, Peter raised it, I think Ian may have also said it, of people who are renters here and proliferate in our area will have this rate increase put upon them. And renters, by nature of who they are, suffer from lack of affordable housing. And that's something that's going to be an imposition upon them. And I think I've just about come to everything that I needed to say. And on that basis, I would say this, Mayor, before I finish, is that I would like to have heard some of the other alternative things that people said that support it, because that should be in a forum. This is not a forum. This is like an inquisition. A forum is where we exchange ideas and come together. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Registered speaker is Leo Nelson. If you would come forward, please. Again, your name, where you're from, and that you read and understand and abide by the...
Mayor and councillors, my name is Leo Nelson and I'm from the best suburb in the LGA, Neutral Bay. Now, I've understood the rules, but if you see any tomatoes flying towards my back from the gallery, please let me know, because a lot of people are not going to like what I have to say. Now, firstly, I want to thank the Mayor and councillors for making the hard decisions required. No elected official wants to go to the electorate with a rate increase, but you know what? Sometimes it has to be done. The electorate, not the election. Now, we have two options. Well, the council has two options. We can either keep going as we are, breaking even, not really worrying about the future, or we can make the hard decisions and invest in our infrastructure and the future so our children, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren can have the infrastructure that we had. The simple fact is a lot of the stuff around our city is run down. North Sydney Oval, probably going to be renamed, I don't know, Commonwealth Bank, North Sydney Oval, who knows? That's falling apart. The bus stops are falling apart. The pool has just been rebuilt and that's going to have to be maintained too. We can talk about development all we want, but unfortunately, the way developer contributions work is that they only fund infrastructure being built, not necessarily the maintenance. Now, a lot of people here have raised concerns about the shocking increase. I mean, How are people in North Sydney, one of the wealthiest parts of Australia, if not the world, how are they going to be able to afford $9 a week? I don't know. I don't know, Madam Mayor and Council. I don't know. But the simple fact is councils cost money to run. And running councils, funding infrastructure and looking after the public infrastructure that we have costs money. And that money has to come from somewhere. Now, we either increase rates by $9 a week or we put pokies in council chambers. And I know which option I prefer. Now, well, but at the end of the day, we are getting a good deal in North Sydney. My mother in regional Queensland pays $4,500 a year for a 3-bedroom townhouse. And I'll tell you what, the services in North Sydney are much better. Like her street doesn't get swept every other night. She doesn't have the local sporting fields re-turfed every season. We get pretty good value for money, but things are expensive and we have to pay for it somehow. So we can't change the Local Government Act. We can't change the rate peg, but what we can do is make a pretty modest increase to the rates that council collects to fund the future. It's that simple, and I want to thank the council, the working majority of this council, that has the courage to do something about it. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the speaker? The next registered speaker is Meredith Trevelyan-Jones. If you could also come forward, say where you're from, and that you've read and understood and want to buy side.
My name's Meredith Trevelyan-Jones. I'm a resident of Cremorne, and yes, I've read and I understand and happy to comply with the conditions. Well, good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to address you on this issue, and Happy New Year. I'm not only a resident of Cremorne, I'm a ratepayer. I've been a ratepayer for many years. During my university studies, I took a gap year, worked full-time for the year and saved a deposit to buy a terrace house in Newtown. It wasn't that hard. I didn't have a car. I used the buses. They turned up and they turned up on time. They hadn't been privatised. My electricity bills were low. The electricity system hadn't been privatised. My insurance with GIO was inexpensive. The GIO hasn't been privatised. I've been a property owner and ratepayer ever since. These days, my electricity bill is horrific, and I dread getting a notice regarding insurance premiums. I don't want a large rates increase. But what's the alternative? A large amount of council's expenses are due to statutory obligations. We can't stop assessing development applications. Should we remove shelters at the bus stops for the buses that don't often come and avoid the maintenance costs? Well, I'd rather lobby for improved bus services. I don't want to see a downgrade in infrastructure or services in the area in which I live. I want the parks and roads maintained. I want the library and community centres to continue to serve the community. Should we take out loans to pay for operating expenses? As a business owner, I know that's not sensible, that's desperation. Do we privatise assets? Well, if we sell off income-earning assets, then our revenue shortfall only gets worse. If we sell off assets which accommodate council services, then we have to rent alternative accommodation. And once an asset is gone, as one of the other speakers said, it's gone. Years ago, a large part of Cameron Park was sold off and subdivided for housing. If only we had that open space today. We'll never get it back. There might be an opportunity to sell off 1 or 2 unused assets, but that won't be enough to address a structural problem. I know privatisation is supported by some people for ideological reasons, but a large part of the community is against the sale of public assets. They've seen it results in profits for the few and increased costs and reduced services for the many. Loans and privatisation would entail increases in interest costs and a loss of public assets, which will inevitably end up as a greater burden on the younger generation. More than 50% of households, and many of the people here have said this, more than 50% of households in North Sydney are renting. Many are trying to save for their own home. They don't get the breaks that I enjoyed. If we as a community continue to put a greater and greater burden on the younger generation, in my view, that's not fair. As much as I don't want a rates rise, I believe that objecting to one would be selfish. I believe in fair's fair. I ask that you vote for the recommendation. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you for your participation. The The next registered speaker is Mr. Paul Kellett. Again, if you could come forward, give your name.
I think it's left the chamber there.
Okay, there are two further speakers who have opted to attend remotely. So if Mr. Kellett returns, we will come to him last, and we'll move to Kyle France, not online. Antoinette Yanko, not in the waiting room. And given that we're more than an hour and nearly an hour and 15 minutes after the beginning of the forum, I think that we will have to move on. If we don't have Mr. Kellett here, then I propose to close the public forum and we will have a 10-minute adjournment before we resume the council meeting. Thank you all for your participation and thank you all for showing respect to this new form of public forum and meeting practice. Thank you very much.
Recording stopped.
Oh, forum's over. The forum is over.
Thank you.
Recording in progress.
I'll just call the gallery.
Oh, hello.
We've resumed the council meeting. Councillors?
Yes.
Resume the formal council meeting. We have been through all of the opening provisions. Is there a motion?
I'd like to move the motion with an amendment, please, Mayor.
You want to move it a motion?
Yep, and I'd like to.
Well, just get up and, well, it's not an amendment. When you move a motion, whether it's the recommendation or something different, that's a motion.
Yes, I understand that. So I'm moving the motion. I'd like to see an amendment.
What I suggest is you clearly want to do something different to what is in the recommendation. It's not the motion. Your motion is what you move, whatever that might be. So it may include some of the recommendation or be different too.
So I would like to change it. So I'd like to delete 5, please. And I'd like to amend 4. B. Yep, okay, 4. I'll take it 4, please. B, please. And you've got B. Oh, that's B.
Read.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just making sure I've got it covered. I'd actually like to take out A and B and just replace A with option 1, rate P only.
If that's what you're wishing to move, then you're going to have to take out. Well, in fact, you don't need to. You can just move. All of the recommendation is OTOs. What you're moving is that we not make an application for a special rate variation and instead adopt option 1, which is the rate peg. We don't need to make an application to IPART for that.
Still like that. 2 and 3.
Well, you'll need to take out 2 and 3.
Fine, take it out. That's fine.
Well, Councillor Keane, I'm going to ask you to alter your tone. I'm trying to assist you to move a motion that makes sense.
Thank you.
And in fact, 4 goes out because you're not seeking to make.
Fine, thank you.
Yep. And a new 2, I suppose, which is that council
adopt option 1.
Adopt option 1.
And further consultation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Carr. Councillor Berry.
Madam Mayor, I have an amendment.
Yep.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Welsh. We'll just allow the minute taker to catch up. So it's the full recommendation as published in the business paper. Councillor Welsh. So it's what's further up the page. All of that 1 to 5. Councillor Beregi, do you wish to speak to the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak to the amendment. Firstly, thank you to the CEO and to council staff for the comprehensive report informing the decision that we are making this evening. Thank you to those who have addressed the council this evening. Thank you to those who made submissions, and thank you to those who participated in the demographic community survey. It would be easy to stand here this evening and kick the can down the road, vote against applying to IPART for a special rate variation and an increase to the minimum rate. It would be easy to sell the crown jewels for a quick sugar hit, to kick the can down the road, close our eyes, hope the problem goes away, or leave it for another day. But that is not our role. Doing that would be reckless and irresponsible. It would be an abandonment of our community at a time of enormous uncertainty when the community has told us clearly that they want and need the services the council provides. They want services that are not only to continue, but some to be of a high standard and even expanded. And they want a financially sustainable council. When the SRV application last year failed, the situation of council did not go away. The immediate liquidity crisis was funded by yet another loan, a further $10 million loan from TCorp, on top of a $31 million loan taken out in April 2022 and a $20 million loan taken out in July 2024. More debt on top of existing debt, all of which must be repaid with interest. To address liquidity concerns, infrastructure renewal budgets were cut for yet a third year. Workforce vacancies were left unfilled. We currently have over 40 unfilled vacancies to ensure council has liquidity, and other measures were adopted. But these measures are not sustainable and expose the council to increased operational risk. And the results of these measures are clear. Bus stop shelters being propped up and braced, community centres are unable to operate fully due to collapsed ceilings, and funds being redirected from what are essential works to now emergency works. This cannot continue. There's been much talk about financial mismanagement, and rightly so. But our community knows that the financial issues necessitating this SRV application are not of this council's making. When the ultimate form of community consultation occurred, that being an election, the community voted for change. Of the 7 councillors who voted for the North Sydney Olympic Pool project, only 1 remains on council. Yet, as happens at all levels of government, the legacy of poor decision-making by a previous administration continues, and this council inherited a mess not of its making. And we knew this was going to be entirely avoidable. The Mayor, former councillor Tony Carr and I warned this would happen. We voted more than 20 times against the redevelopment plans and put forward sensible, fiscally responsible alternatives, which were all ignored. Once the majority voted and the contractual obligations were signed, the die was cast. The application to IPART for a special rate variation is one of many tools to turn the ship around and return council to financial sustainability. Council has put in many guardrails to prevent such reckless decision-making ever happening in the future. A restricted reserves policy to improve governance, control and transparency of council's cash and investment reserves has been adopted. This means that a future council can never put another council in the position that we are in and cripple the council's business operations. Council also adopted a governance strategy. In introducing it, the Mayor said it would strengthen council's governance and decision-making frameworks to guide all the decisions of council, no matter how large or small, and to ensure that bad governance and poor decision-making around the pool redevelopment project would never be repeated. This was adopted by the council. However, councillors Keane, Carr and Spencerley voted against it. Through the CEO, council has reviewed its internal operations, reducing director-level positions from 6 to 3. But internal efficiencies can only go so far. Council's IT systems are outdated, requiring paper forms and repeated data entry, which is a barrier to efficiency. A re-strengthened ARIC has steered council along the way. In previous ARICs being the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, the pool project was not even discussed, barely raised a mention. Council has looked at other ways to increase revenue. As we know, North Sydney local government area is one of the densest education precincts in the country, and we know schools are exempt from paying rates. But when the Mayor put forward a mayoral minute to explore opportunities, the motion was supported by the council, but not unanimously, with councillors Keane and Carr voting not to explore that revenue opportunity. Under the New South Wales Local Government Act, councillors are required to consider intergenerational equity in their decision-making. That's what I'm doing today in supporting this option.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against the amendment? Councillor Santa.
Thank you, Mayor. I also thank the Chief Executive and staff for the professionalism they've shown in preparing this report and for undertaking the comprehensive community consultation and objective market research on which this report is based and its recommendations. In particular, I note findings from this consultation and research that North Sydney residents are among the most socio-economically advanced in Australia. Financial provisions are already in place to assist those in financial need, and that without a rate increase, our ability to undertake financial assistance to the needy would be limited. I also note that the consultation showed there is a strong majority view in favour of maintaining or increasing infrastructure spend, and there is support for exploring additional revenue sources. Rather than preoccupying ourselves with percentages, as has perhaps been the case in the recent past, let's for once look at this issue in terms of dollars and cents and the increased costs for individual ratepayers which would occur under either of the two options that we are considering. Under option 2, the average residential increase above a rate peg increase would be $319 over 3 years. Under option 3, it would be $452. 2.5 years from now, the increased rate per annum in 28-29 would be $307 under option 2 and $481 under option 3, with an average per annum increase in the 3 financial years of $102 or $160. There would be a $2 to $3 per week increase over what they would pay if rates were only set by CPI increases. That's option 1. We're also starting from an incredibly low base rate caused by a number of factors. The unimproved capital value system of rate determination, alongside our high proportion of medium-high density housing, with more than 70% of North Sydney's residents paying the minimum rate. The legacy of TED Mac's 10-year rate freeze, followed by the then state government's introduction of the rate pegging system, has frozen our rates. That's why North Sydney has the 3rd lowest rate level of any Sydney metropolitan LGA. So it's a long-standing systemic problem. Up to now, these long-standing problems have not been addressed, and it has at last fallen on this council to do so. In considering the issue of rates, in my view, we need to focus primarily on council's responsibilities for infrastructure. And let's just list a few of these: stormwater, seawalls, the library, community centres, the pool. These are always council responsibilities, not a state government responsibility. Sporting grounds and facilities, parks, open spaces, and the coastal environment, affordable housing, community transport, bus stop shelters, community benefit shops. And we should all be concerned at the plainly visible deterioration in the physical viability of council property. Under option 2, 2/3 of the increased rate, around $245, would go to the desperately needed restoration of minimum annual infrastructure renewals and towards the infrastructure backlog. Under option 3, over $300 of the $452 increase would be allocated for these infrastructural needs. Option 3 would also enable us at last to recruit a full-time business development manager who, in addition to expanding the range of business opportunities for our community, increase the sources of non-rate revenues for council. We also need to address the upcoming increased financial and infrastructural challenges presented to us by implementation of the state government's TOD and medium density projects, which will greatly increase our population density without so far any reference to the extra infrastructure such as open space, which we in council are about to face. Some in the media have argued that our financial problems will be easily fixed if we undertook a serious program of redevelopment of some of our assets, like Ward Street Car Park. The claim that council has neglected valuating our assets is incorrect for a number of reasons. We have undertaken a program of redevelopment of a number of these sites. Look at Crow's Nest Car Park, Woolworths, for example, and this undertaking is ongoing. We also need immediate financial reform. Redevelopment of our sites would, of course, take time, which we don't have. The other point this argument fails to understand is that more than 60% of the revenue for local government still comes from rates. It is the current unacceptably low level of rate charges for North Sydney, which is the core problem. No amount of asset sales, further loans, or redevelopment of council sites will fix this. Only a realistic rate level in line with the norm for other councils will.
Thank you, Councillor Santa. We've had 2 speakers for. Are there any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I will be, I do not support the rate rise at this time. Council's own financial statements over the past 3 years demonstrate that we have operated with a surplus and that we are able to meet our liquidity requirements. This indicates that Council is not currently under the immediate financial stress that would justify increasing rates by 52%. Our residents have told us very clearly that they are already dealing with rising costs, and the majority have said that they're not willing to pay much more than they currently do. I don't think it is reasonable or responsible to push through a higher rate rise when the community is saying no. As a councillor who cares for our residents, I am listening to these concerns. A particular concern for me is the North Sydney Olympic Pool, which is forecast to operate at a loss. This is a valuable community asset, and Council must be clearer about where the money is going, and how these losses will be managed going forward. I'm also concerned that through the documentation before us, I keep seeing references to the informing strategies and projects rather than a clear focus on project prioritization and delivery in line with residents' needs and financial capability. My view is that Council should take a more cautious approach, finishing the pool, strategically review our asset portfolio, prioritize urgent infrastructure renewals, and keeping any increase as small as possible if it cannot be avoided. This would be a fairer and more responsible approach for our community. And I have a question through you, Mayor, for the General Manager. Is the plan to submit the SOV documentation to IPART tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, with the timeline for applications to be submitted is the 2nd of February, so it will be before then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are here today to discuss a proposal that will fundamentally change the cost of living in North Sydney forever. Option 3, the recommended pathway. It isn't just a variation, it's a compounded permanent increase over 53% over the next 3 years. While the staff report uses the language sustainability, we need to speak the language of the people who pay the bills. For a household or a small business, a 23% jump in year 1 is not a reasonable impact, it's financial shock. Last year, IPART rejected Council's application because the community was confused about where the money was going. The most compelling argument against this proposal is found in the Council's own engagement data. The report recommends option 3, yet only 22% of surveyed residents chose it as their first preference. Contrast that with the rate peg only option. Over half our residents, 52%, selected the rate peg as their first choice. Why? The number one reason cited by the community was a lack of confidence in Council's financial management. When 70% of your community is supportive of staying with the rate peg and only 22% want the maximum hike, choosing option 3 isn't leadership. It's a dismissal of the community's voice. We're ignoring the 52% who told us clearly, use the funds you already have more wisely. The timing of this meeting is unbelievable. In school holidays, many people are away. Last year it was in February. Yes, it's 2nd of February is the deadline, but there's certainly time at the end of January, not the middle of January. We have a great number of representatives here tonight, and we do thank you because we are really pleased that you took the time to speak to us and come to the meeting and share your views. I have to say all your views were quite different, which also led us down another thinking path, which I'm very appreciative. I have a number of emails from residents expressing their disappointment not being able to attend this meeting. This afternoon we heard from Leonie, Gary and Helen. In advance of that, I've heard from Tim, Dean, Diane, Marilyn, George, Ian, Susie, Lisbeth, Sharon and Kian, to name a few. IPART has previously warned that these sharp increases hit the most vulnerable, those on fixed incomes and apartment owners, the hardest. North Sydney's high property values hide the reality of retirees and single income families. It makes up 43% of the population who are at risk and currently drowning in a cost of living crisis. We are asking them to bear the burden, a burden that the majority of our community has explicitly rejected in the survey. The capacity to pay report suggests these increases are reasonable. I invite those who write the report to sit down with a pensioner in Kirribilli or a renter in Wollstonecraft and explain why their rates need to outpace the rate peg by 5 or 6 times. With the consultation, alternatives to a rate rise were recommended. 69% very supportive and supportive of corporate private hire, event hire of North Sydney Pool. 51% very supportive and supportive of increased fees for commercial large group park use. 54% very supportive of naming rights for local facilities, including the pool and North Sydney Oval. 39% very supportive of commercial advertising in public spaces. These are to name a few that we can offset this increased rate rise, proposed increased rate rise. Only 1 in 5 residents want option 3. More than 1 in 2 residents want a rate peg. As elected representatives, it's up to you to represent the welfare of the North Sydney people. Proceeding with option 3 would be a breach of the community's trust and a disregard for their clear feedback. I urge you to reject option 3. Let's build sustainability through discipline, internal efficiency, not by overriding the expressed will of the people who elected you.
Thank you, Councillor Kane. Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll leave the bulk of my comments to if the amendment is passed and then adopted to be discussed. But I thought I would use this opportunity to
correct you, if the amendment is passed, it will then become the motion and we will vote straight away. So your 5 minutes should be voted to the whatever you wish to say.
Thank you, Mayor. I will continue. It's very easy to say it's only $9 a month. Well, it's only $9 a month if that's the minimum. It's significantly more if the apartment value and rateable value is more. I grew up in a low-income family. I had 2 teachers as parents, and I don't think I'd seen the inside of a restaurant until I was in my teens. An excitement for us was a bucket of KFC on a Friday night, and a bucket of KFC cost, around about that $9. So to dismiss people's livelihoods, people's enjoyment, people's quality of life, people's, small victories by saying it's only $9 when we represent tens of thousands of people does not lead us to represent all of our community. It's easy to say, here we are again. It's easy to say it's deja vu. It's easy to say there's immaterial cost savings, that there's lack of alternatives addressed. But it goes back to first principles. The pool has sucked an enormous amount of money out of this council. And the current report says, this is not necessarily about funding the pool, but the pool has been funded and our financial position is where we are because of the pool. And I can understand and respect how frustrating that would be for the people around the table who fought diligently against the pool and who were ultimately proved right. But we are where we are and we represent the community. As councillors have noted, 22% of people support option 3. Yet we're saying here that council receive and note the contents of the special rate variation. How do we note that and then ignore it? Are we not better off saying that council notes and ignores the feedback? I think council, we have to look at what we're here to do. We're here to represent our community. We're here to listen to them. We're here to defend them. We're here to listen to the pensioners, to the people who can't afford this, to the emails I'm sure have all gotten that say this will affect the quality of food. This will affect my ability to live in the LGA. We're talking thousands of peoples. This is not a balance sheet problem. This is not a P&L problem. This is impacting our residents' livelihood, their comfort of living. We're here to lead. We're community leaders. We've been elected to do that. Yet back in June, rather than lead by example, we voted, unfortunately, to pay ourselves the maximum. What message does that now send to IPARC that we've explored all alternatives for reducing cost within council? We're here to support. We're here to support. Yet 52% of people will be having this rate increase passed through in their rent. 52% of people who are trying to save to finally get on the property ladder. How are we supporting affordable housing by increasing costs with an enormous 50 to 60% increase in rates? That's not supporting affordable housing, which we like to talk about around the table here. That's contributing to a cost of living crisis. That's contributing to a lack of affordable housing. And we're here to listen to our community. We're not doing that. In fact, we're doing the exact opposite of listening to our community. Why do we go out to surveys of our community when we literally ignore them? Why do we not engage in proper science-based formats to find out exactly what our community is willing to pay? I took part in the survey. I continually asked if would I like more, less, or the same of that service would impact my rates? And the person conducting the survey couldn't tell me. How is that informed survey mechanisms? And we're here to be equitable. And I think Mr. Dong noted this particularly well. Why are we increasing the minimum rate payers? Logically, those that have the least ability to pay. Why are we increasing their share of the pie the most? Are we doing our job if that's the message we send to our community, that we want to increase the costs the most to take the most amount of money from those that have the least assets? That's not equitable, ladies and gentlemen. So, in summary, we need to listen to our community. We need to be smarter about the way that we construct this. This is the same process and the same project, which I believe, again, IPART will materially reject. We have the opportunity to be smart. We have the opportunity to tier our rates based on full pension, partial pension, so that we impact the people who can't afford this the least. We have the ability to potentially pass through reduced rates to those occupying and can demonstrate renting.
At your 5 minutes, if you could finalise your remarks.
Sure. We could differentiate our rating based on people's ability to pay. We have flexibility, we have the intelligence. This is the same proposal, dressed up again, that does not listen to the community and is not equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. If you could mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Political titan, diplomat and polymath Benjamin Franklin once said, "The bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten." No one likes to pay more, but a cheap job done badly is a reminder you wake up with every single day. Our role as councillors is to be the eyes and ears for this community and to look at the performance, strategy and goals of this council. The last SRV application nearly 1 year ago was an ambitious attempt to set North Sydney on a long-term road to recovery after a decade of chaos, which had seen our LGA failing to spend on essentials and splurging on a raft of vanity projects, tying us into long-term legal contracts and debt. No one should need be reminded that in November 2017, a near 30 million repair to the pool was transformed into a 122 million black hole by a now absent majority. The cost of those decisions has continued to absorb staff and defund every other area or service in North Sydney. Luckily, only one councillor remains who voted for that debacle. Nearly everyone else in this chamber has been working towards righting a significant wrong. As someone who was elected only a year and a half ago, the changes to me are obvious. Everyone can see the independent research and reports attached to this meeting, including the comprehensive work and data conducted by Micromex. These reports look at community appetite to pay, ability to pay, and the reasoning behind any need to pay. The surveys look at differing ages, areas, gender and demographics, from pensioners and renters to the business sector. This goes well beyond asking our community via Your Say or even our wonderful precinct system. The whole issue has been placed in context and analysed with data, qualitative work and trends. The word comprehensive is an understatement. The ability to chart the dollar price of the various different rate options specific to your address via the special rate variation calculator is another significant change. Clarity and certainty have replaced the misinformation and wild claims that we saw in 2025. Three things stand out from all of this analysis. We have virtually the lowest metropolitan rates in Sydney and remain one of the most affluent council areas in Australia. Lastly, that our infrastructure or asset management backlog is significant. None of these facts can be ignored and should be addressed. Infrastructure is a broad term, but if we look at this current spell of torrential wet weather we've been having here in Sydney, It has been held at bay by our seawalls, dispersed by our roads, drains and stormwater. Our gross pollutant traps prevent the worst runoff from entering the harbour. This is just one aspect of the crucial work the council provides. Invisible but essential assets like these need maintenance. The cost of not doing so is subsidence, erosion, flooded homes, sinkholes and potholes. Real issues, real impacts. The community appetite for either substantial asset sales and increased debt is very clear from these reports. It's not wanted. Most people are aware that we must prepare for a significantly larger and more dense population, density which is being dictated by the state government. We will need all our assets to be operating on at least a functional level rather than the current critical levels described in the asset management report. A poorer council is weaker in its levels of service and its ability to stand up for its residents. So much more can be addressed and achieved across North Sydney with the special rate variation in the amended motion. I support the motion.
Councillor Walsh, I have a procedural motion that the amendment be put. We had 3 for, 3 against.
Is there a seconder for the procedural motion? No, that fails for want of a seconder.
Mayor, I would like to propose an amendment if I could.
No, we're debating an amendment, so you can either have a foreshadowed motion, but we have to deal with the amendment and whether or not it's successful or lost. So I'll keep that for the outcome of this amendment.
Thank you.
Councillor Antonini, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So here we are again. Nothing has changed. Our assets, our community centres, our sporting facilities, our bus shelters continue to degrade. Our one and only library that is at capacity still leaks with the children's area flooding and the only lift coming to the end of its service life. Our council continues to make Hobson's choices, stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We've had to make the difficult choices between fixing seawalls and upgrades to emergency PA systems for North Sydney Oval, or transferring $750,000 of funds earmarked to fix the roof of our long leaking council chambers to now fixing the collapsed roof of a community centre. Bus shelters inspected weekly by engineers to ensure their safety, or constant checks of artificial turf playing fields, knowing that once they tear, we don't have the money or the funds to replace them. We simply cannot continue like this. Our community deserves better. This council has worked hard to streamline our workforce, increase productivity, and improve our services. Our staff have continued to work with out-of-date systems while having to pick up the extra workload of jobs left unfilled. Vital renewal of decaying assets has continued to be delayed, leading to increased cost of repairs. Small leaks left unfixed become collapsed roofs and major repairs. This is simply unsustainable. This didn't happen overnight. This is decades of neglect, of kicking the can down the road, of leaving the hard decisions for someone else. Well, we are that someone else, and now is the time. Most of the councillors here realise that this might not be a popular decision. It's not a decision any of us really want to make. It's simply something that must be done. So while some of our colleagues might play politics and our local member might be making social media posts trying to derail this council, don't be confused by their motives. One group is working to strengthen our community and its future, and the other is drenched in self-interest.
Seriously? Sorry, that's unacceptable.
No,
I find
it
that
was an
completely
opinion.
unacceptable.
No, well, I've ruled against you. Continue, please.
While IPART last year suggested selling off assets, cutting of services and increasing our debt, our community has continually told us time and time again that they don't want our assets sold and that they don't want our services cut, and they expect and want a high level of services. Is the rating system fair? No, it isn't, as Mr. Dong mentioned this evening. The breakdown of rates isn't equitable. In his case, a small unit paying the same as a luxury apartment. While council might receive more from 80 apartments than one freestanding home, it also requires to service a much larger number of residents. There are modest homes where families are struggling with the cost of repairs, paying far more in rates than $15 million apartments, paying only $744 a year. Unfortunately, councils need to work within the rules set by the state, but we are and will continue to advocate for a fairer rate system. In the meantime, there is only one way forward. There is no other responsible option except to support the council's motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hoy.
This decision is not one any of us take lightly, and whatever decision any councillor here takes, I choose to believe that everyone here is making it in what they believe is the best interest of the people we're elected to represent. I want to thank everyone who's come tonight to contribute to the debate on this important public decision. I also want to thank the council staff who have put considerable work and effort into preparing the over 700 pages of supporting documentation that sets out clearly and dispassionately the financial reality of the council. I've read these reports, considered their implications, and attempted to balance them against the values and desires and aspirations of the people elected, the people that elected us to represent when they voted in this council in September 2024. Since that election, we've made hard decision after hard decision to try and balance our finances. It's been grueling. You don't have to look far to find these hard choices. Councillor Antonini already listed a few of them. Our most recent meeting at the end of last year had this council have to urgently redirect over $200,000 from the 25-26 footpath renewal program to fund critical embankment works along Alfred Street North. It's not an isolated incident. It's representative of the choices this council is having to make time and again. Every reallocation of funding is plugging a gap, but it's not just that. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. That money taken from the footpath renewal program sees footpaths to deteriorate faster, degrading public amenity and increasing the future cost of renewals. It reminds me of the sorry saga of my first car as an 18-year-old. It was a bit old, it was in pretty good nick. It had been regularly serviced and always had authentic parts. But working part-time while studying and with competing priorities, under my teenage ownership, those regular services dried up. My part-time income meant I had to prioritize which things I would spend my limited money on. And so after the aircon carked it, I sweated through the summers. Jump forward, surprise, surprise, I hadn't kept up with the maintenance of my car, ended up paying more in the long run. Ultimately, I ended up getting about $200 in cash from the scrap metal company. I had to borrow money to buy another car, and future me was kicking myself. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. Of course, despite how neat I think my analogy might be, council finances are a little more complex than how my part-time payslip could stretch to cover my first car. One of the speakers said the council had no financial issues and that our net operating profit for the past few years had the council in the green. The more appropriate metric, and one against which we are benchmarked by the Office of Local Government, is the operating performance ratio. On that metric, council finances are dire. Similarly, net cash on hand is not a useful metric because much of that cash sits in restricted accounts. Developer contributions and their interest payments and domestic waste levy surpluses leap out. And then there's the big obligation, the infrastructure backlog of $157 million. Council finances under option 1 sees our operating performance ratio forecast at -2.69% in year 1 and an average of -2.75% over the 10-year period. We are losing money every year. This would mean the council would continue to be unable to fund annual infrastructure renewals, reduce infrastructure backlogs, or provide infrastructure for the growing population. We'll be going backwards and future generations will be stuck with an even greater cleanup task than the one we currently face. Staff salary increases under the award and statutory liabilities, including superannuation, cost shifting, price inflation, declining state and federal funding, and broken legislation governing build-to-rent projects compound the financial pressures on the council. I support option 3 because despite not getting us all of the way out of the woods, I see it as the only option presented to us that will get council's finances out of the red and able to make the important investments our community deserve. We can't cut our way out of this problem. There is a fundamental structural imbalance in our finances that is a result of years and years of low rates. Option 3 to me is a sensible proposal that would still see the average and minimum rates paid by North Sydney residents at or below the rates paid by comparable and neighbouring councils. Option 3 won't see services cut or reduced. Option 3 is the only proposal that delivers moderate investment with infrastructure support, including a moderate allocation of money for new capital infrastructure projects that support community life here in this LGA, including maximising the use of existing open space, supporting disability and inclusion, reducing emissions, improving stormwater reuse, and improved traffic management. And it's the only option that will reserve money for future capital infrastructure priorities to support the realisation of projects within the developer contribution plan. Without those reservations, there is an opportunity cost that council won't be able to access the cost multiplier that DCPs provide, and once again, future residents and future generations will be further disadvantaged. I agree with many of the comments from speakers that have spoken to the inequity of our rating balance. The legislation does not allow us to distinguish between luxury and standard apartments, otherwise I'd be there in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, I cannot currently see a better way to achieve the financial repair that is needed to deliver the services our community deserve than that proposed under option 3. That's why I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Hoy. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I agree with many of the comments that have already been said by many of the speakers. But over the engagement period, Council received more than 1,260 community responses through surveys and submissions. We had one speaker say that we needed to do more. I just struggle sometimes. That level of participation clearly shows how strongly our community cares about council services, infrastructure, and long-term direction. The messages were consistent. Residents strongly support maintaining existing services and infrastructure, and they want better outcomes from both. Council undertook a capacity to pay analysis. This considered the socioeconomic profile of our area and concluded that the proposed special rate variation options are reasonable. North Sydney is among the most socio-economically advantaged communities in Australia, with all suburbs ranking in the top 1 to 2% nationally. Most households are in the top half of the New South Wales income distribution. Unemployment is low. Pensioner rebate uptake is just 4%. And mortgage and rental stress are well below Greater Sydney averages. Importantly, Council's hardship provisions remain in place for residents. After considering our legislative responsibilities, financial position, community feedback, capacity to pay, alternative revenue options, and productivity improvements, yes, we have done many productivity improvements, option 3 is recommended. This recommendation must be understood in the context of Council's financial reality, which is unsustainable. Council faces several critical challenges. There are ongoing structural operating deficits. Infrastructure renewal is significantly underfunded. The infrastructure backlog stands at 157 million and will continue to grow without intervention. Council currently has no capacity to invest in infrastructure or co-contribute to priority projects, and its financial resilience is low, leaving it vulnerable to shocks and unplanned expenses. Recently, Council had to fund the North Sydney Oval PA system, a critical safety upgrade, by taking funds from the Blues Point seawall repair capital budget. These pressures have been intensified by the escalating costs of the North Sydney Olympic Pool redevelopment. As a result, asset deterioration across buildings, stormwater, and other infrastructure is already visible. Community expectations are clear. 87% of residents rate infrastructure maintenance as important or very important. Most oppose asset sales unless proceeds deliver long-term benefit, and nearly half do not support increased debt. Option 3 provides the most balanced and responsible response. It restores infrastructure renewal funding, begins to address the backlog, reduces long-term risks, and supports intergenerational equity, which we didn't hear a lot about tonight. It also allows modest targeted investment in priority areas such as access and inclusion, economic development, sustainability, and transport. This is not an easy decision, but it is a necessary one. Option 3 represents a responsible, evidence-based pathways to secure council's financial health and ensure we can continue to deliver services and infrastructure now and into the future. I support the recommendation.
Just before I hand back to the mover of the amendment for your right of reply, I'm going to speak briefly, if I can, to the amendment. As many have said, it was just under 12 months ago that we gathered here and resolved to apply to IPART for a special rate variation that was to align with Council's 10-year plan. The purpose of that application was to address Council's unsustainable financial position, to meet the challenges of operating deficits, severely underfunded infrastructure renewals, the escalating asset renewal backlog, low financial resilience due in part to the denuded internal reserves that are a result of the North Sydney Olympic Pool redevelopment project, and Council's capacity to invest in new community infrastructure to meet the needs of the existing and rapidly increasing population. Of course, IPART did not support the February 2025 application, even as it found that there was financial need. The fact is, nearly 12 months on, Council's financial need has not changed. I particularly underscore the excellent comments and summary of that from Councillor Hoy in this regard. Over the last 12 months, Council undertook work to address a number of matters raised by IPART, including a service level review with our community, consideration of higher levels of debt and asset sales, the preparation of a detailed performance and improvement plan, the reconsideration of the extent and timing of the increase to the minimum rates, and the adoption of a revised hardship policy. It has been, as others have spoken about, a year of increasingly difficult decisions, especially around infrastructure. The lack of available funds and the need to ensure liquidity sufficient to complete the pool project has meant that infrastructure and renewal priorities are driven by public safety concerns, and other projects have been deferred or cut. This is unsustainable, and it is particularly so for a local government area that is one of the most affluent in the country. Feedback from Council's recent independent community consultation, and there was more than one, they were both in August, September and then October, November, has been very clear. The vast majority of residents want Council to maintain and, where possible, improve services and local facilities. Very few support cutting services or further deterioration of community assets. Almost 3/4 of residents agreed that each generation should contribute to the renewal of community infrastructure they have used and benefited from. In addition, the majority of residents told us that they do not support asset sales and they do not want Council to take on further debt, with the underlying expectation that if debt is required, Council should take a cautious approach. That is, borrowing tied to current financial sustainability and income generating projects rather than debt-driven acceleration of infrastructure delivery. Over the past 3 years, Council has strengthened financial management and improved efficiency, identifying $66 million in savings and productivity gains over the next decade. But these initiatives alone cannot address the $157 million infrastructure renewal backlog that has built up over many years. The proposed additional rating revenue is to be directed to reducing that $157 million infrastructure backlog, including building and stormwater renewals, replacing outdated corporate systems to boost internal productivity and maintaining current service levels. Crucially, option 3 also allows this Council to plan for the future. And if we do not do that, we will be leaving a Council that has gone backwards to those who come after us. We must ensure community buildings do not continue to crumble, that seawalls will not collapse and stormwater systems do not fail under pressure. Protecting the services and spaces that our community relies on and loves is at the heart of this decision tonight. Over and over, the community tells us that they highly value quality services delivered by Council and they want them to be maintained or improved. They expect that public assets such as roads and footpaths, parks, community centres, sporting fields and more will continue to be maintained and to be done so in good condition. Indeed, it is striking that the two separate pieces of work undertaken by Micromax, Micromex in August, September on service levels and asset condition, and again in October on the options before us tonight, demonstrate that particularly young people, women and renters and those over 65 support a rate increase, and they crucially want council to plan for the future. I must address the gobsmacking assertion from the Liberal councillors that this council is not engaging in responsible financial management by considering this option. It is particularly breathtaking to me that councillors who voted over and over and over again to recklessly support the North Sydney Olympic Pool redevelopment in the absence of any true community consultation and without any business case, because the fact is a 4-page brochure was produced after the council committed to the project and did not include the source of the internal funding nor the basis for the servicing of the debt. That they should seek to criticise this very council that has worked so hard to make certain that such poor management and financial recklessness can never be repeated is truly astounding. I know there is community concern about council's past financial decision making and management, and I share that concern. It is the reason that I stood for election at the last election, knowing that I would be part of a clean-up crew to address a legacy of poor financial decisions and embed a culture of strong governance and continuous performance improvement, knowing that there would be decisions to be made that may not be popular, but would be in the public interest and serve this generation and the next. Addressing this financial reality requires us to confront a lost decade of challenges and underscores the need for strategic, responsible decision-making. We must ensure that council can continue to support the basic essential services and infrastructure our community relies upon and continue to plan for the increased density that is already upon us, with much, much more to come. If option 3 is implemented, the fact is that ratepayers will still be paying less than or the same rates as our neighbours in adjoining local government areas. In the end, we are tasked as councillors to make decisions informed not only by community consultation and surveys, but we have an obligation to consider the next generation. We are required, both at law and morally, to make this decision with intergenerational equity at the forefront of our minds. And we are also tasked to recognise the diverse needs and interests of the local community. And that is 76,000 residents, 80,000 workers and 12,000 school students who come to North Sydney each week. We must make the decision in the broader public interest. Now is not the time for cheap political point scoring. All councillors, no matter what your political party, have a responsibility to deal with this issue now, and unlike our predecessors, refuse to kick the can further down the road. Now is the time to make that difficult decision in the greater public good, for the greater public good. So I support the amendment. Councillor Berrick, your right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. And I thank all speakers for their contributions. I won't repeat much of what was said, which is in my notes again. Thank you, Councillor Hoy, for going through the operating performance ratio and pointing that out. It is a dire situation for council. I also note the Micromex survey, which, as the Mayor says, has said that people actually want services and want us to provide them and want them to be provided at a high level. I would just bring everyone back to what our role here as councillors is. Under the Local Government Act, we are required to consider intergenerational equity in our decision-making. This means balancing the needs and circumstances of today's community with the needs and interests of future generations. The Act requires us to consider the long-term and cumulative impacts of decisions, not just the short-term outcomes. It also places a clear obligation on councils to practice sound financial management, ensuring that today's residents and ratepayers who benefit and continue to benefit from infrastructure investment and services funded by previous generations, then contribute fairly to maintaining those services and to provide infrastructure for future residents, rather than passing on the debt and costs of degraded assets to future ratepayers. In practice, this means maintaining our infrastructure, managing our assets responsibly, and making financially sustainable decisions about spending, debt, and investment. Supporting this course of action is not only prudent, but it is a statutory responsibility and a matter of fairness to both our current community and those who will come after us. In my opinion, option 1 does not align with the obligations as an elected representative, and I therefore cannot support this option. When considering options 2 and 3, I note that for average residential rates, the difference between option 2 and 3 at the end of year 3 is $148 a year, which is equivalent to $2.85 a week. However, what that $2.85 a week provides is considerably more than option 2. It provides funding for new infrastructure, for upgrades to improve accessibility of parks and playgrounds. For too long, the needs of those with a disability and those who require additional accessibility support has been treated as a nice to have, not a need to have. This cannot continue. Improving the accessibility of parks, playgrounds and all infrastructure is a need to have, and it benefits us all. Option 3 also promotes for investment in projects to promote access, social inclusion and cohesion. If ever there was a time for initiatives to support access, social inclusion and community cohesion, it is now. And sadly, such initiatives are likely to be needed for the foreseeable future. Option 3 acknowledges the reality we face. It addresses it honestly and puts this council back on a path to sustainability while safeguarding the services and infrastructure our community relies upon. It is fair, it is measured. It reflects our obligation to both current and future ratepayers. In saying that it is fair, I don't think the rating system is fair, but that is not what we are here to debate tonight. For these reasons, I will be supporting option 3.
Thank you. I put the amendment. All those in favour and those against? And the amendment is carried. The amendment therefore becomes the motion. I put the motion. All those in favour?
Sorry, Mayor, I have an amendment to the motion.
No,
That was foreshadowed and you mentioned you would deal with it once the amendment became the motion.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Put the amendment, give me your amendment.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the effect on many of our community and the diverging views on what
Rather than argue
data
it, could you just put what your, so that before you argue what it is, could you give us what the amendment is so the
Certainly.
minute taker can put it down?
That the raw data from the Micromex survey, if anonymised, if required, be included in full in the IPART submission.
That's not truly an amendment, so I have to rule it out of order. It's not an amendment to what is now the motion, which is the whole of that of what is the motion, which relates to the amendment to the adoption of the revised draft long-term financial plan. That's just not relating to, it's almost a negative because your amendment doesn't include the whole of the motion that is currently before us. So I'm ruling that out of order. That means that we now have...
Sorry, Mayor, then I have another amendment to propose.
If we put it forward.
Yep, that we list...
But bear in mind that if you're putting an amendment, it has to relate to the motion.
Well, Mayor, I think we have to disagree on the fact that providing the data that is the basis of the community consultation to the
but that's
tribunal.
That's the be all and end all of your motion, and it doesn't.
No, I understand that. That is, but I fail to see how that's not considered an amendment to provide the data on the basis of the amendment. It is related to the entire submission.
Are you intending to include your amendment into the motion? Is that...
Yes,
so
correct.
So you're going to move that we put an application in a 0.6. So you're going to move the application for option 3.
So 0.6 would read that the Micromex data in all its formats be provided, anonymised if required, in full, along with our IPART submission, so that IPART may themselves see, understand.
So you've got the raw data from the Micromex survey be included in the IPART submission. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Your second. Councillor Berrigan.
Madam Mayor, I may consider taking that on in the motion. I would just like to ask the CEO what the implications and whether that is possible under privacy laws and also what is standard practice for applications to IPART and whether that level of detail is required.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the information that we have contracted from Micromex is the reporting. We can secure more detailed reporting in relation to the opt-in survey, but it is unlikely the raw data will be provided given privacy reasons.
And sorry, pardon me, just a point of order is that we're happy for the data to be anonymised.
Well, the
motion.
CEO was asked and
sorry.
answered, and the answer seemed to be around what has privacy laws and what we've contracted to be provided with.
Yes, just noting that the motion doesn't contain the required, or sorry, what I specified, which is anonymised if required.
Okay, so that the raw data, comma, anonymised if required.
We haven't contracted it, so maybe we can close.
Comma. Okay, so that's your amendment. Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Those are the same famous old saying, which is lies, lies, and damn statistics. You know, I'll note Councillor Welsh said nearly half of people supported no increase in debt. But if we reverse that statement, more than half of people supported more use of debt. There's been a huge amount of assertions and claims based on this Micromex data that people were incredibly in favour of more services. Well, of course they are. This goes back to 12 months deja vu, where I suggested that the way to write surveys correctly is that you have to place the cost burden along with the question of service. Would you like this service if increased, if it maintained or increased your rates by X%? That's the correct way to formulate and ask survey questions to get the actual data. So we can make claims. There's 1,260 responses. We can say that 48%, and therefore is an enormous amount of people didn't support debt, but 52% did. So let's stop debating and making ambit claims on the data set, and let's give IPART the data set in any way that's possible. We don't have to, we can give them what we can in terms of the data, and allow them to see in raw what the data said, how scientific that data was, and the way it was created. That, fellow councillors, is transparency and accountability, and that is a term that we use fairly often around here, and I would hope that we support providing transparent data, the way that the survey was completed, anonymised if required, to IPART along with our submission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the mover of the motion and the seconder, Councillor Welsh, whether you'll take on the amendment.
Happy to.
Councillor Welsh, yep. So your proposed amendment has been included in the motion, as moved by Councillor Berrigan and Welsh. On that basis, we don't need to debate your addition any further. So I'm going to put the motion, which has been debated.
I did mention I have another amendment as well, if I could.
Well, if you could put it, it'd be useful if you did it all at once, if you've got any further as well.
Happy to, Mayor. Yeah. So point 7, that given the impact to ratepayers and the requirement from my part to make changes, that councillors vote towards changing their salaries from the maximum to the minimum, and to lead by example.
I mean, it isn't relevant because the fact is that all 3 of the councillors who voted against it have not rejected the increase. Anyone can do that at any time. It doesn't require a resolution of council. And so on that basis, I'm ruling it out of order. Have you got another amendment that you'd like to put?
Yes, Mayor. Just again, in the interest of transparency to IPART, is that we create a list of assets that we considered for sale, as noted in the documents, and next to it, the reason we believe we should not sell those assets. again, providing transparency and supporting our case.
I'm not going to, I'm ruling that out of order because if you've read the documents, you'd know that council has resolved to pursue the review of the property in the next 12 months, 6 to 12 months. So that's already there, and it doesn't add anything, but I'm ruling it out of order. If you have no further amendments, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is just for clarity, the motion is Councillor Berrigan and Welsh's with the addition of 6 that the raw data anonymised if required from the Micromex survey be included in the IPART submission. So that is what is before the council. All those in favour? And those against?
Sorry, Mayor, can I just clarify, Mayor? I'm just on a little bit of a delay here. Is the motion that's before us is the entire motion or the motion 7, which was accepted by the?
No, motion 7 has been, your amendment 7 has been ruled out of order. The motion itself is 1 to 6. 6 is your amendment that was taken on by the mover and seconder.
I understand. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you
for clarity, I'm going to put the motion again. All those in favour? And those against? And that is carried. And that brings us to the close of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.